So where are we at?
I have no idea. Some mill something. Mill, city, mill, something. Mill.
Where they mill.
Where they mill. Lots of milling going on.
Most people tend to eat cereal, biscuits, and wheat products without thinking about the milling process. But there's a lot that goes into it, and also a science of converting wheat into flour products, and it was this area of Minneapolis that produced most of the country's flour at one time. So I'm pretty sure this is stone that was used in the milling process. Why was the city known as the flour milling capital of the world for a half century starting in the 1880s? Look no farther than the Mississippi River. It was the power of the water going over St. Anthony Falls that was harnessed to make products that we've all used.
What's this stuff? Some cereal. It's supposed to be good for you. Did you try it? I'm not gonna try it. You try it. I'm not gonna try it. Let's get Mikey.
The industry made some people millionaires like the Pillsburys. The truth is, Minneapolis was built on the flour industry, with the city growing up around this milling district. The population of Minneapolis grew from 13,000 in 1870 to nearly 165,000 20 years later. Ancillary businesses boomed up as well, including bag and barrel making and ironworks. Not all the milling here was for flour. Before we made it to the Mill City Museum, we came to this plaque marking the spot of the North Star Woolen Mill, the first water-powered mill on the west side of the river. It was built in 1864 and focused on making high-quality blankets. The grain that was milled here came in on rail cars from fields across the northern plains, the Dakotas, and Canada. Trains also carried the milled flour to Duluth, Minnesota on Lake Superior and shipped to eastern destinations for foreign and domestic sales. That's why James J. Hill, the baron of the Great Northern Railway, had this massive stone arch bridge built across the Mississippi in 1883.
You're going to be able to get to see it up at the observation deck.
We get to go up there, I guess. Here's the mills, ruins.
A man named Cadwallader Washburn teamed up with John Crosby in 1877 to form the Washburn Crosby Company, best known for their gold medal flour brand. The massive mill was located here on this spot, but a catastrophic explosion from dust occurred on May 2, 1878, leveling much of the building and killing 14 employees. The explosion was heard 10 miles away as far as St. Paul and shook the ground so hard that many thought there was an earthquake. Experts concluded that two dry millstones had rubbed against each other, causing a spark that ignited the dust, and thus a massive explosion occurred. There are a number of photos today showing the devastation and cleanup efforts. If you happen to think that fake photos are a modern concept, check out this fake artist rendering of the moment the mill exploded. The destruction of the mill seriously impacted the city's productive capacity for flour. Washburn quickly worked to build a new mill on the site, which included this archway that stands today as a memorial to the 14 men who died in the explosion. When the Washburn A Mill reopened in 1880, it was the most advanced and the largest in the world. At peak production, it grounded enough flour to make 12 million loaves of bread in one day. This level of production was unheard of, as most mills at the time were still smaller operations only serving the towns and cities that they were located in. Minneapolis eventually lost its grip on flour milling, and the mill was abandoned in the 1960s. But in February 1991, the 111-year-old Washburn A Mill was engulfed in fire and it collapsed while the rest of it was gutted. The intense heat is what caused these steel girders to twist and buckle. The fire sparked a revitalization of the Minneapolis riverfront and the creation of the Mill City Museum within the ruins of the original mill. Today, the building's ruins are a National Historic Landmark. Says we're standing on what was the ground floor of the Washburn A Mill. This floor housed the equipment that linked the power of St. Anthony Falls to the machines that milled the flour. A huge hole in front of us is a turbine pit, built in 1879. We found the museum interesting because it highlights the process and some of the products that have come from the milling operations here. Bisquick, for example, came along in 1930 when General Mills executive Carl Smith was traveling by train and had a hankering for biscuits. While the dining car had finished serving dinner, the cook quickly sent out the baked good. When Smith asked how they were whipped up so quickly, the chef revealed a pre-mixed blend of lard, baking powder, flour, and salt that he stored in an ice chest. Smith saw a potential of a mixed baking product because cake, biscuit, and muffin mixes didn't yet exist. As noted before, this was a millstone. It was used to crush wheat into flour.
Here's how the employees got up the elevator. They stood right here and held on tight.
The middlings purifier is what separated the part of the wheat kernel needed to make flour. Not only does fine flour dust have the potential to cause spontaneous combustion and explode, as I previously recounted, it also caused white lung diseases in some mill workers. So this device helped to reduce fine dust and worked as a vacuum cleaner. It's fitting that the museum has on display a steam-driven Minnesota Giant No. 14 tractor patented in 1881, which helped to harvest wheat sent to the mills. It was manufactured by prisoners in the state prison in Stillwater. Wheaties were created by the Washburn Crosby Company in 1921 as a result of an accidental spill of a wheat bran mixture onto a hot stove, which crackled and sizzled into a crisp flake. And the lovable Pillsbury Doughboy was created in 1965 when an advertising agent came up with a brand mascot who would pop out of a can of refrigerated dough. The character was named Poppin' Fresh, a nod to the product's quality and freshness. Betty Crocker is a brand and fictional character used in advertising campaigns for food and recipes. The character was created by the Washburn Crosby Company in 1921 to give a personalized response to consumer product questions. General Mills introduced the Red Spoon logo with their signature, replacing it on gold medal flour, Bisquick, and cake mixes. This simple, fun, interactive model shows how more than 20 stone flour mills tapped into the power of water above the falls by funneling it through canals on both sides of the river and into shafts. The pressure of the water stored in the vertical columns turned the turbines, which turned shafts connected to millstones.
So if you shut this water supply off, shuts that whole operation down.
The museum notes a sad chapter in history where Minnesota mill operators stepped up to do their part in a hunger relief effort. In 1914, after being invaded by Germany, the tiny nation of Belgium suffered a food shortage since it only grew about a quarter of its food needs and the German occupiers took food for themselves. The civilian population faced imminent starvation unless a large quantity of food was quickly delivered. Future President Herbert Hoover came to the rescue and the Commission for Relief in Belgium was formed. Between 1914 and 1919, the Commission operated entirely with voluntary efforts and was able to feed close to 10 million people in Belgium and northern France by raising the money, obtaining contributions of food, shipping it past German submarine blockades and troops, and controlling the food distribution in Belgium. Close to 700 million pounds of flour were shipped to Belgium, much of it donated from Minneapolis. Many grateful recipients of donated flour would embroider messages of thanks. This one presented in 1915 to the Commander Larrabee Flour Company, which later merged into Archer Daniels Midland. Now, we did enjoy a ride up the flour tower, but we're told that we couldn't shoot any video to show you. It's basically a seating area in an elevator which opens onto different levels for a multimedia presentation on the life of a mill worker. At the very end of the attraction, we were lifted to the observation deck where Sarah, her sister Shannon, and I got a spectacular view of the mighty Mississippi and the city of Minneapolis. We also couldn't resist taking a selfie. Now, you may be wondering why St. Anthony Falls doesn't look like it did when the Native American tribes were here, and there's a simple reason for that. An apron was required to prevent its continual recession from water erosion. This map does a good job at showing how the falls slowly moved upstream over the centuries, and continued erosion would threaten the ability to channel waters to the mills. More than 20 stone flour mills were posted along the covered canal, flowing with water drawn from the river above the falls.
Probably learned today more about flour than you ever did. And the fact that it can
the fact
ignite.
that I just learned that it can blow stuff up is pretty new to me.
Sugar is the same way. It's very flammable. Sugar dust.
So why is flour dust and sugar dust so flammable?
I don't know why it is.
She just knows that it
I
is.
just know that it is.
She's guessing, right?
No,
She knows it is. She just doesn't know
I
what.
used to live across the Carquinez Strait from the C&H plant, and they do a test of their alarms every month or every week. I don't remember how often, but I could hear it at my house. And
What if it has to do with static electricity too?
That's what you said.
In 1928, the Washburn Crosby Company merged with 28 other mills and was renamed General Mills. Eventually, in 2001, General Mills bought out Pillsbury, finally uniting two of Minneapolis's largest flour manufacturers. After the First World War, the milling industry in Minneapolis began to decline. The availability of electricity allowed flour to be milled anywhere, no longer depending on water for power. That and federal import-export regulations led mills to move to cities better situated to process Canadian wheat. By 1930, most of the flour produced in the United States came from Buffalo, New York. The old mills of Minneapolis were abandoned, and some fell to the wrecking ball. The Pillsbury A Mill was the last riverfront mill to shut down in 2003.
So that was all a part of it. Now it's just other buildings or other offices or something. Look at the little corner balcony.
This is our ticket straight down.
Charlie in a great glass elevator. Ooh, that's fast.
Don't like that, huh?
It's slower than Frolic.
Yes.
Most of the flour here was used by housewives and initially sold in barrels weighing 196 pounds. It wasn't until later that the barrels were replaced by 100, 50, and 25-pound cotton or jute sacks. But as home baking declined, the commercial baking industry grew.
I do have to say, I think I've learned more about flour milling than I ever knew in my life, or probably ever wanted to know in my life, until we hit this area of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So it's pretty cool, pretty educational experience today. So now I think the consensus is we're gonna get some pizza, some Minnesota pizza.
Is it going?